Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Rick Mast Show. I am Charlie Marlow. That is the great Rick Mast. We're both wearing glasses on this beautiful
Yeah,
Monday morning. Rick, how are you doing, sir?
doing well, Charlie. Just Monday morning, trying to get everything lined up for the week and figure out what I got to do to survive, man. Got to figure out what I got to do to survive. Just like those remaining guys in the championship or the chase.
There you go. Let's start right there. The Watermelon Man, a non-playoff driver, winning at Kansas. What'd you think of the race?
Yeah, it was a good race. I mean, they. What I liked was the fan reaction after. You get on social media, or you can listen to Sirius XM a lot with those guys, and then you learn a lot of stuff with those guys. You learn what the fans are thinking, and then get on social media, and really, very good fan reaction to this race. It was a lot better than last week. Although last week we had trouble with people not liking it. Although I liked it, but it was a cool race. I mean, we had a lot of storylines again, a lot of stuff going on. I mean, uh, the one thing that stood out was, well, a lot of things stood out, but I like Navarre, right? Had that little shot, that little glimpse, and I tell you, Charlie, when one of the things you look for if you're a driver and you're trying to make it in Cup or trying to get up to Cup, right? And maybe you're not in the best of equipment or whatever, but if you've got a shot at doing this, you'll show a glimpse sometime of running real well. In other words, like Hocevar, if he runs 25th or 30th or 20th, well, at some point during the season, at some segment during some race, they'll hit on something and the car will be pretty good, and that driver will shine. He'll lead. He'll be up front, and that's what gives you an indication of, okay, this guy can get this done in our sport, right? I've seen this happen many times, and that's what it reminded me of yesterday with Hocevar. Although he's had other moments like that, when you get a driver that could do that, I mean, I look back at different guys. Ernie Irvan, the great Ernie Irvan, years ago, his deal was at Bristol, right? He was with DK Orch's car, not the best team. And he got out there and he shined, man. My deal was Daytona of '89. Maybe not the best funded deal, but I got out there and shined. And then other guys did the same thing coming through. And then you had guys that would never, for whatever reasons, would never have that, not opportunity, but they never would shine. They never would show a glimpse of what they could do, and ultimately they wouldn't make it in the sport. But that was one of those shine moments for Hocevar yesterday. I got off on a
Yeah.
tangent, man, but I just thinking out loud.
No, I like it. So, and then look at Ross Chastain. So here's a
Yeah,
guy who's not in the playoffs, and you have his teammate at Trackhouse, Daniel Suarez, into the round of 12, has a chance
yeah,
to crack the top 8. I think he's 10th right now. I think it also speaks to how hard it is not just to win a race in NASCAR, but to win a race to make the playoffs. I mean, look at a couple weeks back, a guy like Buescher who probably should have been in, and then he wins a race as a non-playoff driver. And Ross Chastain is somebody who I think we've maybe forgotten about a little bit. He was kind of the talk of NASCAR in 2022. Basically, him and Denny Hamlin going at it. And I remember at Gateway here, Worldwide Technology Raceway, Hamlin said, I'm gonna get him back when it's meaningful. And Chastain was the story in 2022. He finished second in the championship, and here he is a couple years later. I mean, definitely had a chance to make the playoffs, but didn't, and wins a race here at Kansas.
yeah. I mean, Chastain he's one of those guys that we talked about a couple weeks ago, Charlie, that needs to be in our chase. I mean, he's the people love Chastain a lot. He's got his name and his image and who he is. He generates a lot of interest. If not, you wouldn't have had Anheuser-Busch sponsoring that team this year, right? I mean, that was a big deal for Anheuser-Busch to go over to that team and Chastain, and and it was not a sad thing, but a little bit hard that he won yesterday and Busch Light wasn't on the car, right? It was Kubota, I guess, the other sponsor for a limited thing. But yeah, he's one of those guys that just he drives a lot of interest. He piques everybody's interest. And I guess it comes from the early deal of wrecking everybody and wrecking all the time and always been in fights with people. And then the deal at Martinsville solidified it when he went wide open to get into Chase last year, right? And he's just one of those guys you kind of like, you kind of pull for. The fans kind of like, kind of pull for. When he pulled the rein, he's one of those drivers, man. When he pulled the reins back and still was remain competitive, then that just made him a mainstay in our sport. So many guys causing problems, and you get on them and they wrecking people, and they have to stop wrecking people, and when they do, they lose their competitive edge. Chastain didn't do that. He's one of the guys that kept it going. So yeah, he's a mainstay in our sport, that's for sure. Sorry about that. I hit my nightstand, man. Is everybody still there? Yeah,
We're
here we are.
here. All
Okay,
good.
okay,
We can
okay.
hear you.
All
We
right.
can see you.
Okay.
Okay, because you brought this up, I think this is very interesting. You brought up the Busch Light, Kubota, and the fact that you didn't have Busch Light on the car for the victory. And I think this is very interesting. It's topical. It's something we've talked about a lot over the last couple of years. But if you saw the article last week from Adam Stern, where he wrote that FedEx was going to even further reduce their sponsorship of Denny Hamlin and maybe reduce it altogether. Now that was the article. I think it was last Wednesday, Thursday, whenever it was, Friday. But then I watched Denny Hamlin's media availability, and he was asked about it. And it did seem like FedEx was going to stay on in some capacity, at least for 2025, based on Denny Hamlin's comments. But let's say they reduce the number of races as the primary sponsor, whatever. I mean, don't you think, to me, as coming into the sport as a casual NASCAR fan, I know we've discussed this, but I mean, that's big. The fact that race in, race out, you can't really tell who the car is, right? By the paint scheme. And I think that's what made your guys' era iconic. Go 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. You just knew the cars. And I do think that's something NASCAR needs to figure out from a marketing standpoint. The colors, the color schemes, it really helps if you can have that primary sponsor for most of the races.
There's no doubt. Doubt. I mean, and I find myself, Charlie, watching the races and trying to pick out the driver. I'm trying to figure out who the hell that is running seventh that just made two passes, right, and got into fifth. And you're watching the camera. If you're there at the racetrack, you're watching it. But if you're on TV, you're watching whatever the camera's showing you. So you've got to see what they're showing you, or you've got to watch what they're showing you. So you'll see a group of cars, and you're like, all right, and I'm looking at the screen trying to figure out who that car is in seventh. I just saw this particular car make some kind of move, and it made me interested. And I looked, and I'm trying to figure out the number, and I'm trying to figure out who it is, and I'm looking back down, and I'm like trying to follow the car, and I have no idea who the hell I'm looking at, right? Because each week it changes, and it didn't used to be that way. I mean, Charlie, when you look at the race, you would see the black three, all right? You see that black two. You see that black and gold number one. You knew who it was. I mean, because the paint scheme stayed the same all year, and it just made it interesting, or made it neat to be able to follow them. And I'm telling you, as you know, I'm a student of the sport, Charlie, and I can't figure it out. I'm sitting there watching the race, and I'm trying to follow a driver, and he gets lost in the maze of colors that are never the same each week. You don't know who's who and what's what. But, I don't know what they do about that. I mean, NASCAR, I don't know how they would dictate. Here's a color scheme. You got to have this color scheme, start this color scheme in Daytona, and you got to keep it all year. I don't know whether they can do something like that, or they can't do that. And then the price of what it costs to run these cars for a season, right? And you're trying to keep one sponsor. It's hard to do that now because the price is so much more. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you do about that, but it is a hit. It does take away from what we've got, or what we're doing, what we're trying to do. There's no doubt about that. And it's just, I don't know. It just makes it tougher. It makes it a lot tougher. I don't know what we do to fix it, though.
And Kyle Busch, he seems to have been, whether you want to call it snake bit, luck, bad outcomes, whatever it is, and we're all kind of prisoner of the moment. I can't remember, at least over the last 3-4 years when I'm really paying attention, a driver who seemingly has been in it at the end of, I mean, off the top of my head, it's got to be 5 to 7 races this year where you thought Kyle Busch had a really good chance to win? I mean, we're talking at the end, last 10 laps, last 5 laps, whatever it is, and he can't get a win. I guess the good part is he's running well, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Second half of the season, he's running well, but man, that dude can't buy a win.
No, he can't. And it's and everybody, you know what, but here's the neat part of that, right? Everybody, when Bush went to Childress, right, all of a sudden he became he gained a lot of fans because he was the most hated in our sport for years, right? And he went to Childress, and people felt like that he got hosed at Gibbs, or he maybe wasn't taken care of properly. So he won a sympathy vote from fans. He gained a lot of fans from a sympathy side, right? And then he gained a lot of fans because he's going to Childress and he's going to Chevrolet and away from Toyota. That gained him fans. Well, now what's happening, dude, is he's gaining the remaining fans in our sport are now turning towards Kyle Busch because he's a 20-year veteran. He's a multi-champion, and he can't buy a win, right? He's getting more of the sympathy vote. I mean, what remaining sympathy vote was still out there, he's got it now because he's just having a hell of a time. And we talk about it, Charlie, or I talk about the ebbs and flows of racing and the ups and downs and what happens. And you know, this is one of those deals. It's just like you go through a period of gas mileage races, or you go through a period of right front tires blowing, right? You just go through periods of things. Right now, we're going through a period of, or Kyle Busch is going through a period of, he can't buy a win. He just can't buy a win. And that's just to me, it's just a period that happens in our sport that he happens to be in right now. He's in a deal where I can't win. I don't give a damn what I do. I can lap the field. I can be the fastest car. I can do whatever I want to do. I cannot win this race, or I can't win the race. And it's gaining him tons and tons of popularity. I don't know if he realizes. He probably does, but I don't know if everybody realizes it. But I'm telling you right now, Charlie, he's gaining tons and tons of popularity over what's going on right now, even though he's not winning. But it's good to see the car running fast. All right, that's a good deal. They've kind of turned it on. They've got it going on. So you know, it's like I told you this here 2 months ago. It wouldn't surprise me one bit for Kyle Busch to win a race right before the Chase deal and get in the Chase and win the championship, just the way the thing works. But you know, that's not going to happen. But he
And I'll
might
tell you
win.
what, yeah, Carl Edwards shows up again. You know, he lives there in Columbia, so I was wondering if we'd ever see him at the St. Louis race, but he's there. He's driving the pace car in Kansas. Surely looks like he could drive. I mean, hell, he looks like he could play cornerback in the NFL right now. And he's talking about how he's falling in love with NASCAR again. So, you know, I don't know if it'll be Cup, but Carl Edwards, the last 2-3 years, he's going in the Hall of Fame, so you'll have all that going on. I think we're going to see him in a race car maybe next year. Maybe it's Xfinity. Maybe it's a one-off Dale Earnhardt Jr. type thing. But we're seeing cousin Carl more and more at the tracks, which is good.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if it's good for NASCAR, then I'm all for it, right? As I've told you before, Charlie, my problem with Carl is he came into our sport pretty quick. He phenomenal driver, did his deal, won his races, made his fortune, and left the sport, not to be heard from again. So, you know, when he got into the Hall of Fame, then that was to me it wasn't justified to me. I mean, I've gone along with every single member that's went into the Hall of Fame. That's the one that I didn't agree with, and I don't have any personal vendetta against Carl Edwards. I'm just like, you know, we never heard you. You never did anything for the sport. You came into our sport. You won the races. You left our sport, not to be heard from again, not to do anything to help our sport or to drive our sport, other than the moment that you were in our sport. And then you get into the Hall of Fame and you know, all that. So I never went along with his inclusion in that deal for that reason. But that's me, okay? And now he comes back and he's falling in love with NASCAR kid. I think it's great, man. I think it's great if he does that and comes back, if he races some more or just becomes an ambassador just around our sport. Because listen, man, cousin Carl, he had a hell of a lot of fans, man, when he left the sport. You know what I mean? He had a lot. He had a big fan base, and his name and himself, and he was important to our sport, I think, when he left. And that's another reason I felt ill towards that, right? He just left with all that being out there. But if he wants to come back and wants to be a part of it, then I think it's great. I think it can only be just good if he does that. Hopefully he does. Hopefully he does. Hopefully he is falling in love with the sport again. I don't know. We'll see.
All right, let's talk about the playoff standings right now as they stand. So William Byron is your leader. You got Ryan Blaney, Christopher Bell, Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, Alex Bowman, Chase Elliott, Joey Logano. That's the top 8. As of right now, we know it won't end like this, but if it did, you got all 4 Hendrick drivers would advance to the round of 8. But I think the more I'm just kind of looking at the 16, the 12 down to the 8, I feel like when you get it down to the 8, that's where you're really seeing some elite drivers falling off. Look
Yeah.
at right now.
Yeah.
If Kansas was the cutoff, your regular season champ Tyler Reddick would not have made it. And Alex Bowman, right? I mean, he's had his struggles, so maybe you could see a Bowman fall off and a Reddick get in there, but once you get it down to 8, I mean, there's a lot of big time drivers that are going to get left out.
Yeah, it gets tighter and tighter, right? That's basically what you're saying, Charlie. It's tighter and tighter, and really, you're getting down to the elite guys. I mean, who we got? Chase Elliott. What is he? 4 out, I think, right now. Just sneaky back there, and he could very easily win this thing. It's just, I don't know, man. You watch this stuff and you're constantly watching the ticker on TV and you're watching where they're at. And you're like, man, we get a couple more races. It's going to be like last week. And we're going to be sitting there just staring at this, trying to figure out who's going to do what. And, I don't, man, for me personally, I don't know. I have trouble trying to figure out how this thing is going to end up. It's like my dad told me one time or I heard him telling somebody 40 years ago, the worst thing you could do is bet on a race. The worst sport in this world to bet on is a race. You do not bet on races because you don't know of all the things that could go wrong, right? So with that being said, if you're not going to bet on the race, how can you predict? How can you predict who's going to do what? Who's going to make it into the chase? Charlie, I'm rambling here. I'm rambling bad, but I just have trouble. I just have trouble with these predictions. I've never been good at these predictions because I guess it goes back to the philosophy of you can't bet on races. So how are you going to predict races, right? So I don't know, but go ahead, man.
Well, no, I love it. I find it kind of interesting though, when you look at the standings right now. So look at the top 3.
Okay.
I think it's fair to say when you have guys, so like William Byron, it seems like every year comes out of the gate strong, has a little slump in the summer, and comes right back. And here he is, the points leader right now. You have Ryan Blaney, you have Christopher Bell. They're the top 3 right now. I would kind of put them all in the same bucket as really,
Right.
really good, but also
Right.
consistent drivers. Where if you look at the next 2, and to me, Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, more fan favorites. But I think part of that, I think there's clearly more risk reward with those guys. I mean, surely
Sure.
Kyle Larson, that dude
Sure.
sends it, right? He wins a ton of races, but he takes risks and maybe have a few more wrecks. Denny Hamlin, winning more races. He's had some bad luck, but I find it interesting when you look at the top 3 that, and I say this with love, you kind of have those boring but super consistent, really good guys right now in Byron, Blaney, and Bell at the top.
You're exactly right. And those guys, yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. And like one thing I was noticed yesterday when I was looking at it one time, I'm like, Bill France is happy. Bill France Jr. is happy, right? On the racetrack, there were 2 Toyotas, 2 Chevrolets, and a Ford. And then I look at the points deal, right? There's the Ford, Chevrolet. They're all mixed up real equally. And I remember thinking, Bill France Jr. is happy with what he's seeing right now, right? But you take somebody like, and how about the 5 car, man? 1 lap into the race or whatever it was, and the right rear goes flat and knocks him, knocks him from contention all day. If that hadn't happened, I'm afraid you've got a different race yesterday. And the points that he went from 30 some points to 16, cushion. So
Yeah.
all that's different. But you're right about that. You got consistent guys. You got the 5 car that's going to go balls to the wall, and then it comes down again, Charlie. It comes down to the last race. You get down to the 4, then you get down to the last race of the season, and we're going to talk about this when we get to Phoenix. And it's like, to me, the part right now, getting to the Final Four, getting to Phoenix, to me, this is the most exciting. To me, this is more exciting than the Phoenix race, because the Phoenix race is one race. Anything can happen in one race. But to get to Phoenix fighting for the championship, you're in the Final Four. And who those four are, that's the exciting part to me. See how this goes.
So what do you think of the playoff schedule? This round is kind of the opposite of the last round. Similar tracks, but the opposite scheduling of them. So you had Kansas, you have the super speedway. Who the hell knows what's going to happen with Talladega? And then you have the Roval. Do you like the way that you have different tracks and basically you kind of have to strategize different ways for these rounds?
Yeah, I guess it's NASCAR's way of trying to just really, really, really mix it up, because when you throw Talladega in it, right? When you throw Talladega in this mix, I mean, everybody knows. Who knows what's going to go on at Talladega? If you're going to put a Kansas, which is a good, really good race, by the way, yesterday. Again, we talked about that. You throw a Kansas, you throw a Charlotte or a Texas. These races that are common, that you kind of know what's going to happen, sort of. But you throw Talladega in the points mix, man. You don't know. You don't know what's going to happen. I mean, nobody knows. Everybody says it's a wild card race, and it is, because anybody could win it, anybody could lose it. You could get tore up. You can't. I really think NASCAR put Talladega in there just to mix this thing up a little bit. All right, that's what I really think. I think that was the deal. That I think that's the reason they did that. Right, to kind of just to try to mix it up, and then the Roval, sort of falls into that category a little bit, but it does put a premium on. It puts a premium on, man. As you point out, we got to strategize this deal. How are we going to run this race today at Talladega? What are we going to do? We're going to lay back. We're going to try to avoid the big one, which 9 times out of 10 that doesn't work, right? And you see guys doing that. And by the way, Daryl and Harry, the first I ever saw doing that. We were Talladega one time, and the race was going on, and I look up, and man, I'm going by Harry on one side, I'm going by Daryl on the other, and I'm like, well, damn, what's wrong, right? It's like it pulled over and something broke on the car. Well, they went around and rode at the back there the biggest part of the day, and that's the first time I ever saw that happen. And then they would do it a lot. Harry did quit doing it there some, but then Daryl kept doing it, and I never done. I guess it worked sometime. I don't ever remember that working, but anyhow, back to the story. So at Talladega, you strategize as a team and as a driver, and how we're going to run this race today to score the most points. You want to score those segment points, but I don't know. It's just a whole different deal there. You got to figure out how you're going to do it. Then you go to the Roval, and that's just a road course. Who's going to do good? SVG, right? He'll be there in somebody's car driving and probably out front running, and you've got to figure out, on pit strategy, how do we run this road course? And that's a big deal with road courses is pit strategy, more so than other racetracks would go at. So, yeah, they've thrown some stuff in there to mix you up, to end this thing again. But that's what it's about, man. It's entertainment.
Yes, sir, it is. Speaking of entertainment, story time. Rick Mast story time. You got anything? We got Talladega coming up. I know we did some Talladega stories a few months back for the first race, but what you got?
Yeah, I don't really have any stories, man. When I first started out, Charlie, they would be, golly, guys would help you, right? And I had starting out was with Travis Carter, and I remember when we went to Talladega the first time, you hear everybody would talk all these stories about Talladega, right? The Indian burial grounds, and it goes in those days to not having engineering and not understanding a lot of times what's going on with your race car. You go to Talladega, these guys would go to Talladega, and it was more pronounced there than probably any racetrack. You would unload the car and you would be fast as hell and have no understanding why, not really sure why. And you go back the next race with the exact same race car. Maybe you come back and put a cover over it. I've heard guys doing this. Put a cover over it, not even touch the car. Go back the race, and can't even make the field. Guys would get killed, right? Guys would get hurt and maimed there, and you guys would cover up the car on Saturday as a fast race car. They get up on Sunday, Monday would start the race, and the car wouldn't get out of its own way. They would make changes to the car. Nothing ever made sense. Just a lot of things about Talladega. In those, things would happen, and the guys couldn't answer. The guys couldn't answer why my car did this, why the car did that, right? And so what do? You make up auras, or you come up with perceptions, and all of a sudden, you know what? I don't know why he got killed. I don't know why this car did that, but this is an Indian burial ground. And the Indian spirits are casting their spells out here on everybody because they don't like this racetrack being here, and we're just going to make life miserable for everybody that comes here. And it was an era. It was the end of that era when I came in. The era of thinking like that mind thought processes were kind of ending, but I was able to hear some of that stuff, man, and be involved in some of that, listen to some of that stuff, and you're like, damn, what the crap's this all about? But it was interesting, and people truly would believe this stuff. I mean, you would take a winning crew chief that knew what he was doing, and something would not work, or it would work backwards from the way he knew it should. And it wasn't and these guys had to have a reason, Charlie. They had to come up with a reason why this happened. And, it was at Talladega, it was because of the Indian burial grounds. It would be somebody gave you a $50 bill, or somebody give you a green ink pen that wrote on something, right? Or somebody just walked under a ladder. I mean, that's what would happen. They would come up with an answer to why these things happen. And when they come up with an answer, right, why did my car do this? Well, Billy Bob just came in here with a green marker and marked the tires. Well, there's your answer. Not to be thought of again, right? The real reason was engineering. I mean, you did something mechanically, something caused something to happen. That in those days you didn't have any way of knowing, what that meant, right? But now we do because of everything that goes on. But so then you had to have an answer, and the answer was always some kind of tomfoolery. But it was an interesting era, Charlie, to watch that and listen to that stuff. I mean, I'm talking guys that were very good, winning Hall of Fame guys, right? And they would come up with this stuff, but it was pretty crafty. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I like too you said Billy Bob. Back then, there probably was there's probably a Billy Bob on every crew, and now they're all dudes from MIT and Purdue engineering degrees.
Exactly. And I tell folks all the time, I used to tell them, gosh, in the late 90s, I'd have young guys coming up to me wanting to get in the sport, right? And I could see right then what was happening. I knew what was happening. And I tell them, man, go get your 4-year degree. Go get your 40-year degree. And then for a period of time in the, gosh, maybe 2010, before the years and after years, I mean, these guys were getting so many resumes. I mean, it was my understanding a lot of these teams, they wouldn't even look at hiring a floor sweeper unless you had a 4 or a 2-year degree in after school, right? Or a 40-year degree. It kind of went that way, and then it kind of reverted back. I think those days are gone. Looking at that stuff, but yeah.
I love it. All right, I think I know the answer to this. What is ticking off, pissing off Rick Mast these days, or on this Monday?
Well, Charlie, I'll tell you something. In 1985, dude, me and my wife, we got wiped out. Hurricane Juan, the remnants of Hurricane Juan came through Rockbridge Bass, Virginia, with the remnant, the offspin of it. It's a long story, but anyhow, Hurricane Juan caused this. Anyhow, we ended up with like 8 feet of water in our house. And we live on a river, and it's a fast flowing river. It took pretty much every window and door out of our house, right? Trophies, everything we had in the house, lost all this stuff. Why the house didn't wash away, I don't know. It was an A-frame house, had a stone chimney on one end, a grove of trees on the upper side that really protected it. When it was all said and done, we were fortunate, unlike some of the folks that's going through this deal now in Carolina, Virginia, Georgia, Tennessee. We were fortunate in that night that it happened. We were able to stay with my uncle. Then the next 4 or 5 nights, we were able to stay with my mom and dad at their place. And, the government came in and basically said, hi, oh, this is a mess. Talk to you later, right? We got a 4% loan from the SBA through the government to build back. Red Cross gave us some stuff like brooms and a $100 food voucher and all that. Problem is, I got people that lived close to me, older folks that lost their homes, right? I mean, just wiped away, lost everything, just retired, just had I know one couple just had retired and just made the last payment on the house. Gone. What help did they receive? Nothing. Nothing. Right. 2 months later, there's a big, or 2 or 3 months later, Charlie, there's a major hurricane or major earthquake in Mexico City. United States government, we gave them a check for $35 million, right? We didn't loan them $35 million. We just say, hey guys, here's $35 million. Help your city, right? And that was my first awakening to something that's flawed in our government, right? Like, because I'm looking around, because we were lucky. Sure, and I were young, we could rebuild, and we did, right? But no, the other older folks, they were screwed. So now here we are 40 years later, whatever, and we're watching this catastrophe go on in Southwest Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Georgia. And we know when it's all said and done, what's going to happen. It's going to be just like my deal, okay? We're not going to rebuild these people's lives. Let's put it that way. It's not going to happen. But here's what's got me pissed off, Charlie. I'm watching, because they're in the mountains and the communication has been so bad. I've been following this real close since the beginning. And, there's a fundamental problem in our country, right? One fundamental problem. One of the fundamental problems in our country is we need to have a disaster force, right? When we have these disasters in this country, this thing needs to mobilize. It needs to mobilize within hours, and it needs to head to the scene, right? We've got people down, even as we're speaking right now on a Monday, dude, we got people still stranded right now, stranded. And what have we got? We've got Greg Biffle, right? We got Rick Hendricks. We got Greg Biffle in his helicopter. We've got Hendricks helicopter. We got Gibbs helicopter. Now we're starting to get some military helicopters. We got all these private individuals and companies that are doing all this, sending their at their expense, doing all this to try to rescue these poor people that are trapped, can't get out. They got people dead. They got people. Man, you read some of the stuff, and it concerns me, Charlie, because I try to call some of my buddies down there, right? Can't get through to anyone. Finally talked to a lady last night I know, and she was telling me how devastating it was and how bad it was. And which we know that reading some of this stuff. But dude, Charlie, what is our government's role? What is our first role and responsibility? Serve and protect, or protect and serve. Am I right about this? Or I am right about that, right? Protect and serve, right? Why in the hell do we give $6 billion right now? The guy from Ukraine comes in last week. He walks away with another $6 billion, right? And we can't fire up a friggin' military helicopter to go to the mountains of North Carolina and rescue people. It's a fundamental flaw, right? I'm not going to sit here and bash Biden and Harris or whoever. I mean, hell, Bush was, or who was in when Katrina hit, whoever it was, right?
That was George W. Bush.
George W. Bush. I mean, and he caught hell for that deal. But I mean, we see, this is the thing that pisses so many normal people off in our country, right? Every time you look around, the government's not serving and protecting you. But we're serving and protecting everything overseas. And we got people sitting here laying on a rooftop or up in a damn tree somewhere, just begging, hoping somebody comes and drops them some water out of a helicopter, right? And the military or national federal government's nowhere to be seen, but we're sending millions and millions of dollars overseas to stuff. This is what I really think, stuff like that is that's one little small part that's made Donald Trump so popular, right? Stuff like that, just trying to do anti whatever's been going on. I don't know. I think that's one little part of it, but man, it's a fundamental problem. It's a governmental fundamental problem, I think, and I think it could be fixed. Charlie, you can like the mountains. I mean, the beach rescues, everything's going on in the Gulf. We're so used to that. The people that live there, the emergency management, so they're so used to dealing with that. They know what they're doing. we get up the mountains, we got a whole different scale of thing, a different thing that's going on. You got the Department of Emergency Management, which does a great job. You've got all the local things. You got all these local things doing great jobs, right? If it wasn't for them, we'd really be in trouble. But you could take a staff sergeant and be in charge of 30 helicopters. I mean, you don't have to have this grand plan and grand scheme. I mean, a military dude can hop in his damn helicopter and fly down there and put a staff sergeant in charge of 30 helicopters, coordinate in and out, in and out, and in and out. Why, why don't we have this? What's the big deal? It's no big deal. We can damn sure afford it, but I don't know. It's just something I think needs to happen, and we'll see what goes on.
I think another part of this too. I mean, so you have FEMA obviously with the disaster relief, and like everything, this gets politicized, of course. I think whether it's obviously Kamala now or Trump, I do think when the disaster first hits, that it's more of a distraction if those people are on site. Now down the road, couple days, week later, yeah, you go there, you help out, and that also, I think, being the figurehead, it raises people's spirits and all that. But right when it happens, like, I don't think necessarily Kamala or Trump need to be there. And FEMA's in there doing whatever they can do. I'll say this. This is something that, going back to Maui, what we've seen in Florida and California, the insurance industry has been just ravaged by this. I remember looking at my insurance policies for some rental properties, and I've had to deal with FEMA for flood insurance on
Right.
condos that are second story near essentially a creek, where you're thinking, okay, there's a creek there. I get it if maybe you're on the first floor, but you have to get FEMA flood insurance if you have a bank loan for these second story condos, which is odd and all that. I'm going on a tangent now too.
No,
But
that's good.
these insurance policies, I live in St. Louis, Missouri. And last year, when I looked at my little statement there, and it said your insurance has gone up, whatever, 18%, 27%. And they cited the reasons. And one of them was obviously increased costs for labor, contracting, supplies, and all that. But they put right there the disaster relief that they're basically having to pay out. And here's where it's changed for me. There's always been obviously earthquakes and mudslides in California. There's always been hurricanes in Florida too. But I can't remember until last year or so where major insurance providers started saying, we're going to pull out of Florida and California. And I don't care what anybody says. If you're safe, you think you're safe in the middle of the country, your policies are going up too, because it's the same companies that are covering all these, right? And they're losing their ass.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, we were just talking yesterday, Sharon and I, my wife and I, talking about insurance costs, right? Something was going on, one of our policies. You're looking at it, and you get mad. You're like, golly, oh man, we can't afford this. How in the world does everybody keep affording this insurance? And golly, to live on the beach and have a house and pay insurance. And you're exactly right. It doesn't matter what we're doing in our country. We ended up, no matter what the deal is, we end up paying for, the other things that's going on. I mean, me and you, we don't live at the beach. It's not our fault that our house got washed away or swallowed up, but we're going to pay for it, right? And that's the way it is. I mean, it's just the way it is. And I can absorb that more than I can absorb not paying insurance, right? Or not paying for a loss. We can get on to some of that, Charlie. But golly, insurance and taxes, man. Insurance and taxes. How in the world do we get going down this road on the Rick Mast show? God almighty. I do not want to go down this road.
I just filed 2 claims for rental properties and got literal 0 back. And the other thing is, once you file the claim, and I only know this because I just went through this, they kind of keep that claim for 5 years. It's almost like you get a traffic ticket, right? Let's say you get a traffic ticket, and then it stays on your whatever, your resume, your license for a certain amount of years. Then it falls off. Then you might get cheaper
Right.
insurance. Well, they keep that on your insurance, and you essentially can't leave, because as long as that claim is filed, to other insurance companies, you look like you're uninsurable. It's almost like if they pay you out $300, okay, it's like, we paid you the $300. Now you have to stay with us for another 5 years until it falls off to move. I don't even, when I learned of this just in the last year or so, I'm like, how is that legal?
Yeah.
right? How is
Yeah.
that legal? I feel like if I fought that,
Yeah.
we could get that
Yeah.
taken care of.
Maybe so. It's legally, yeah, who knows? Morally, no. Come on, man.
Right.
Morally, it's wrong. Here's a good one for you, Charlie. Going back to my flood in 1985, the flood that wiped us out, basically. We, for some reason that year, that summer, that year, I checked on flood insurance. I don't know why. I just did. I checked on flood insurance. I said, well, we live beside a river, but I've lived on this river my whole life. I know, it's not, it'll never flood this house, right? Couldn't get flood insurance. Couldn't get it. Finally, we checked. I could get it. Lloyd's of London would have written it. I remember my insurance guy said, well, we can get Lloyd's of London will write a policy. And hell, the premium was more than what my house was worth, right? So we get flooded. When it's all said and done, the SBA comes in, Small Business Administration, through the government, says, we'll give you a 4% loan to build your house back, which is what we did. We borrowed money at 4% interest, which is a great, great friggin' deal. Yeah, big deal, government. Thank you so damn much, right? But at least we're able to get the money. But in order to get the loan, I had to have, guess what? Flood insurance. I had to have flood insurance to get the loan. Well, guess what? The government wrote a flood insurance policy for me. All right. Are you with me? But you can't go to that and buy a flood insurance policy beforehand. You have to have been flooded in order to qualify for flood insurance at that time for this policy to buy. And I only had to buy it because of the SBA loan. Charlie, you can't make this stuff up, dude. I mean, how screwed up is that? I mean, honestly, how screwed up is that? And that's what peed me off so much about so many of the older folks around me that lost everything, right? And talk about losing things, man. It took everything in my house out. Everything we owned went out the door, right? And trophies, a lot of my trophies, race trophies that I had, all gone down the river. Man, we had saved up for like 2 years for us. Hey, I cut the sound off. Wait a minute. I cut the sound off on this thing. All right, here we go.
Good tune, though.
Yeah. We saved up for like 2 years to buy a swimming pool. Bought that pool above ground pool, right? Round pool. I went and I assembled the thing myself, put it together myself like in September, dude. And we get in that thing every day and float around. No, election day in 1985. The flood came through, took my pool away, right? It went on down the river. And anyhow, some of the trophies, maybe that week, one of the neighbors downstream come up and handed me what was left of one of my trophies. Rick, is this yours? I looked at, yeah, one of my trophies, right? And I think we ended up with like 3 or maybe 4 trophies over about a year's time. Somebody downstream would find it along the old riverbank or out in the field. Somebody'd see like a trophy or something. This must be Rick Nass up there. So they'd bring it back to me. But anyhow, that was, yeah. So, it's a screwed up system, dude. And I don't know why we're still flawed. I don't know why in 2024 we're flawed like this. It makes no sense. And, it's just very, very frustrating. But you know what? We're still here. We're still happy. We're still alive. And things are going good, Charlie.
Yes, they are. Okay, let's end on a positive note. I think this is going to be a positive note, but I'm not sure. First of all, slightly more negative. I say my St. Louis Cardinals because I live here. So they finished with 83 wins out of the playoffs. They might get ready to blow up the whole deal because they have a press conference at 2:00 Central to announce some major changes, redoing the minor league system. So we'll see what happens there. But your Atlanta Braves, because of all this weather and whatnot, so they got a doubleheader against the Mets. And if I'm correct, so basically, as long as the Braves don't get swept, they're in. Right. And if they get swept, the Diamondbacks get in. Right. So you have 2 games against the Mets. Are you pretty confident or what?
No, I'm not confident. Of the Braves, hell no, I'm not confident. Golly bum, man, with what they're doing this year with all the injuries and whatever's going on with these guys. No, all they've got to do is win one of these games. Everybody thought they were going to win yesterday, right? Sunday's game, and it would all be over. They wouldn't even have to play. And that was a big deal. Yeah, Braves going to win. Are they going to make them play Monday's games with the Mets because they're meaningless games other than the one would have been anyhow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sitting there thinking, wait a minute, guys, the Braves have to win the friggin' game first, right? Well, they didn't win. They lost. So now they got 2 games today. They got to win one of them, right? Which is a cooler situation than what you guys are going through with the Cards right now. It's just, I don't know. Major League Baseball it's a fascinating sport to watch, right? And just all the stuff that goes on, and when a team gets down, and what goes on with the management, and all right, we're done. We're going to sell off all our players. We're going to rebuild again, right? You think that's what's happening with the Cards? It's a little late for that, but what do you think's going on here, man? It's a big
So,
deal. It's a big deal.
yeah, the Cardinals, there was a really, for all baseball fans, especially Cardinal fans, there was a really pretty scathing article in The Athletic. Katie Wu wrote it. She does a great job covering the Cardinals.
Right.
And she had a lot of anonymous sources from within the organization that was talking about the problems, and I've done TV and radio in St. Louis for like the last 16 years. So we've kind of known about these things. Long story short, the Cardinals basically, they lost their edge in terms of analytics, development, the minor leagues. Forever, that's what the Cardinals were just built on. Their own players, drafting, developing. They never spent a ton of
Right.
money in free agency.
Right.
And they basically lost that edge, let's say, you could even say 8 to 10 years ago. But the thing is, it didn't show itself until the last 5 years. Because even think about it like this. The Cardinals were great from 11 to 15. Won a World Series, got to another. They're in the NLCS, I think, 4 straight years. But they kind of lost their edge right around that time, but they were still pretty good for the next 5 years because they had a lot of guys in house. You had Yadier Molina, who was here for 20 years, and Adam Wainwright was here for 20 years. But it just took until the last couple, 2, 3, 4 years where you started to see the fact that these guys from AAA, AA that used to always come up and help, especially pitching, there weren't guys like that anymore. So the Cardinals had to spend in free agency. They're not real good at spending in free agency. So that's what happened last year. The Cardinals were really bad. This year they win 83 games, but they don't make the
Right.
playoffs.
Yeah.
So I think this is the right move to basically start from you always say top down. This is the opposite. You got to start from the bottom up. You got to start with the minor league system. But the Cardinal fans, I think, are going to be pissed if the president of baseball operations, John Mozeliak, and the manager, Ali Marmol, if they're retained, which it seems like they're going to be, I think the fans are still going to be ticked off.
Yeah, with that with like the Braves, I mean, fans fire snit. Every
Right.
third comment on Twitter or X, social media is fire snit, right? Fire. They can't do that with Antonopoulos or whatever the guy's name is. He does such a good job. It's hard to say that about him, but that's just the fans. I mean, that's the fan base. That's what we have, and you're fortunate that the Cardinals fan base is one of them, right?
Yep.
That's one of those fan bases in our country, buddy. That everybody looks up to or admires because they're so adamant about their Cards, right? It's like the Cubs, the Braves are. We're fortunate, Charlie. Our teams are like that. I tell you what, just be glad we're not the White Sox. How about the letter, dude? The White Sox letter. Did you see the letter the White Sox sent out apologizing to the fans? Man, God, we're not that bad. We're not that bad. So everything is good. Everything is good.
Yeah, that was ugly this year. Oh, so it's funny you mentioned the Braves, though, fire snit. And it's like, and I haven't followed the Braves as closely as the Cardinals, but you
Right.
guys dealt with ridiculous amounts of injuries.
Right.
And you still
Right.
might win 90 games,
Yeah.
right? Maybe you
Yeah.
win 89. Hell,
Right.
maybe you win 88 and don't make the playoffs. But still,
Right.
like, to
Right.
finish a year where you have a ton of injuries and still win 88 to 90 games, that's
Yeah.
pretty damn good. Like, if you win 88, 89 games, you should be in the playoffs most years. The Cardinals at 83,
Right.
that's where you put
That,
yourself in a spot where if you're only winning 83, most years you're not going to make the
right.
playoffs.
Right. Yeah. And but you're right there. That's a point where we're good enough to make it. We're good enough to where if we were to luck up and get in, we could make a run, right?
Yeah.
That number. And I always thought 80 was the number, but that's always on the low side. But with the Braves, well, honestly, Charlie, what kept the Braves in this deal was pitching this year. I mean, all the injuries they had, they lost Spencer Strider, which is one of the main pitchers, lost Freed for a while, but the other guys they lost, was more the hitting, the rotation deal or the hitting deal.
Yeah.
And
Acuna.
the reason they're in it is because of pitching. However far they go in the playoffs is going to be because how they hit the ball. The pitch is going to be there, right? The other team's going to score 1 to 4 or 5 runs, and it's going to be up to the Braves to outrun them by hitting. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, I'll
How
tell
in
you
the
what.
world are we on baseball, man?
No,
This
I
is a
like it.
racing show. No, it's
Well,
not.
hey,
This
this
is an
show, though,
American show. This is an
that's right.
American show, baby.
We had racing, we had disaster relief, we had
Yeah.
baseball. We covered almost all of it. So I
We
think that's
had.
a good show, Rick.
Okay, Charlie.
Love it. All right. Thanks everybody for watching, comment, like, subscribe, share the show, share the channels, put them in your group text, put them on social media. Let's keep this thing rolling, and we'll be back. We're going to try to do it earlier in the week so we can have the next day basically breakdown of the race. And Rick, who knows next week after Talladega? It could be
We'll have a
absolutely
lot.
nuts.
We'll have a lot to talk about. Believe me, we'll have a lot to talk about after Talladega. Yeah,
For
it'll be a
sure. All right.
lot.
We'll see you, buddy.
Toodaloo, guys. Thank y'all. Bye.